Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the Borderless webinar on Home Office audits and compliance. I hope everyone's having a lovely afternoon and you guys are enjoying some sunshine up in the East Midlands as I am in London right now, hence the sunglasses. I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes for some late joiners. I appreciate this is around everybody's lunchtime roughly, so please, feel free to attend and have a bit of lunch. We'll send you the slides after and any notes. If everybody, just a few housekeeping rules, if everybody knows, you've got the chat where my colleague Prashanth is, where he'll be sharing a few free resources that we'll go through in today's webinar. So feel free to say hi. Let us know where you're from, where you guys are based. And if there are any Q&As, please put them in the Q&A box. And yeah, I'll just give it a few minutes. Hopefully we'll see some new faces and familiar faces. All right, so I'm just going to get started. So this is a webinar in partnership with MCare and Norarch. So big thank you to Haj and Hema for organising this. So this was based off of the fact that we obviously partner with MCare and Norarch, but we were at a members conference a couple of weeks ago, and off the back of that there was quite high request in us going through home office compliance and how to avoid revocations for care providers with sponsored workers. So just a quick introduction. My name is Freya Preedy. I'm the partnerships manager here at Borderless. So I work with care providers, care associations, other companies within care across the UK, just so we can go hand in hand with your overall compliance, for example, CQC, see what challenges care providers face, because I know it's a huge task and a huge commendable job that you guys do, and we don't want home office compliance to be one of the extra burdens or stresses that you guys struggle with. So you'll see me around, especially with MCare and Norarch, but if you do want to get in contact, I'll leave my contact at the end of today's show. So what we'll cover, so we're going to cover why your license matters in 2026, the enforcement picture, and specifically looking at the East Midlands, what an auditor checks first, and then habits to keep you audit ready. Also, we're going to go through what to expect on the day. So maybe you've had a home office inspection before, and maybe you're curious if it looks a bit different now that there's been so many changes to the home office, or maybe it's that you've never had one before and you just want to know how best to prepare. So that's what we'll go over. So who are Borderless? Just a quick introduction to us, as this is quite a new partnership with MCare. So Borderless, we're a immigration tech platform covering everything to do with your sponsored workers and your sponsor license. So from start to finish immigration, so that's obtaining a sponsor license for you, doing COS requests, visa processing, and then ongoing home office compliance. And also if you need a helping hand while you go through your audits, we're also here for that. So because we are a tech platform, we have ongoing home office compliance just running in the background to ensure that you guys are all up to scratch with your compliance. So this is why your license, it's always mattered, but why it particularly matters now, and it is to do a lot with the staffing crisis going on in the care sector. So since July 2025, you can't recruit care workers from overseas. So you can no longer bring over workers on the visa route of sponsorship with care. However, you can still sponsor people that are already in the UK. So whether it be that they need a new COS or a visa renewal doing, or maybe you want to hire somebody from another company, or in more recent cases, you may be hiring from the pool of displaced workers. So last year there were around 12,000, but this year it's already shot up to 30,000 of displaced workers. And for those who aren't familiar, displaced care workers are a huge pool of talent in the UK that unfortunately the companies they've worked for, they've had their sponsor license revoked. So what that means is they have to stop working for the company immediately, and from when they receive a letter from the Home Office, they then need to either find a new job within 60 days or leave the country, unfortunately. So I think a lot of people are looking to the displaced worker portal at the minute to cover like shift work. Obviously, I think with the care sector being such a huge placement in society, there are a lot of staffing crisis issues at the minute, and a lot of care providers are turning to sponsored staff for numerous reasons, such as they are likely to stay with you longer because their cause depends on it, and staff turnover for sponsored workers is lower. So that is why keeping your license compliantly is crucial in 2026. So the team that you already have are very irreplaceable. I'm sure you guys know this, and so losing your license can have crucial implications. Sponsor license revocations are on the rise. I'm sure you would have felt it in the community. I'm sure you would have heard stories of people having their license revoked like this and losing a large amount of their staff being sponsored. So just to put it into numbers, last year was over 3,000 licenses were revoked, and this year they're already on track to double, basically. So Home Office are getting very strict. I do just want to caveat, sorry, I should have said in the beginning, guys, with the Q&As, if you have personal situations, if you put them in the Q&A, we'll get back to you off the webinar with our immigration team. We'll drop you an email with any questions and answers. So please do fill our box up with, things that you are curious to know or specific situations that you're in. If you would like to share your experience with Home Office as well, please do feel free to put it in the chat. Sometimes it's quite useful to hear from other care providers who have gone through an inspection and, hear it, boots on the ground journalism, see what it's actually like. So how the Home Office find out about your compliance issues, there's a few key changes that have happened in 2026 that leads to this. So the biggest one is the HMRC payroll. So HMRC and UKVI now work hand in hand. So they cross-reference data. So if the Home Office or HMRC suspects that you are at risk of underpaying your sponsored workers, they'll then notify the Home Office, and that can trigger an inspection. So a lot of revocations have happened due to unannounced visits. So this could be for reasons such as whistleblowing, or maybe something has been flagged on the SMS, like late reporting. And a lot of these visits are happening unannounced, and that leads to a lot of care providers not having the correct documentation that should be in place from the very beginning, and a lot of rustling of papers trying to gather evidence, and non-compliance can lead to a revocation. So another reason is the Home Office's deadlines have become a lot stricter, which is a little bit ironic because the Home Office have also increased their delays in terms of communications and causes and things like that. So document requests have tighter deadlines. So this can lead to also in-person inspection. So this is a map that we've created with revocations. So every dot is a Home Office revocation, a license revocation. Just one thing to be clear with the Home Office has made it very clear that a sponsor license is a privilege and not a right. And just as quickly as it is awarded and given, it can be just as easily taken away. So this is very important when you're considering the impacts of revocations, is that the Home Office will have no hesitation in taking away a sponsor license if they believe that any foul play or non-compliance issues have happened. In the East Midlands specifically, already 1 in 5 care providers have had their sponsor license revoked for those that were sponsoring, which is a huge implication in the care sector because 30% of the East Midlands adult social care workforce is sponsored. So not only does it leave the workers without work, and you've got people who are dependent on a visa no longer having that backbone, but you're also left with care providers having rota gaps. That means a lot of people who need the care service users are left without their carers. And in care, especially you guys will know most, is that consistent care by the same carers is so key when it comes to care. And unfortunately, having a revocation and your sponsored workers stopping working for you leads in major gaps in the rota. So Mahesh said, if we have unannounced visit, can we stop them and agree? So you can challenge it and say, you can request a few days extra to get your paperwork sorted or to gather your compliance, although it is best to just always be on the ready. Another reason this could happen is if they have an unannounced visit and your authorizing officer is away, or maybe your HR director or whoever's mainly in charge of your sponsored workforce is away, then you can challenge it and you can say, this person's away, please can we have another deadline or another agreed time. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to do it. So with the Home Office, I think it's very important to remember, like I said, that a license is not a right. So it is always their decision on what is best done. And at the end of the day, they are in charge of who has the sponsor license. So the difference between keeping your license and losing it isn't huge wrongdoings. It's usually a lot of admin habits. So this is a good thing because it means it's quite correctable by attending things like this, having meetings with your team. But here is a few things. So if the Home Office auditor was to walk in tomorrow, quick poll, how ready are you? So are you slightly ready? Your records are current, you're mostly ready, but there would be a few gaps. Or are you not ready at all? You'd be calling people up, where's this document, where's this, or where's the spreadsheet? Or maybe you've never had an inspection before and you're not sure what they would ask for. So I'm going to quickly put a poll up. So we've got a few different answers. Leading the way is mostly, but there would be a few gaps, which is common for this poll that we usually put out. Ready, and quite a few people said that you're not sure what they would even ask for, which again is not uncommon at all, especially when the Home Office are constantly changing the thresholds and changing what they're looking for. So hopefully you end today leaving a little bit more confident if they were to show up unannounced. All right, so passing a Home Office audit. So what they'll check, how to stay ready and what to do on the actual day. So what an auditor checks for is things like right to work checks for every sponsored worker, all in the correct date. So these must be done before the employment date. So before they start work, a right to work check needs to be done. It is a non-compliance issue if you do it after they start work. So visa expiry needs to be tracked and acted upon before they lapse. A big tip we would give at the minute is that the Home Office are very delayed at the minute in getting back to people, in approving visas, in requesting extra documents and things like that. So we would always recommend just looking at who has a visa expiry coming up from about 3 to 4 months in advance, just so that if the Home Office come back to you requesting extra documentation, you've got that ready. And it just ensures that you're always aware of whose visa is expiring, and it means that you don't need to have a gapped wait of losing that person or a risk of losing that worker. Salary matching, so the rate on your COS needs to be what they're receiving on the payroll. So this is a huge non-compliance issue that has led to a lot of revocations, particularly since April 2026. So the cause whatever is on the cause is what your worker needs to be paid. Now, the reason this usually comes up as a huge issue is that most or a lot of care providers believe that because you're meeting national minimum wage, that means that that's enough. However, if your cause or your worker's cause was approved from the date of April 2025, they need to be on an hourly pay of £12.82. However, national minimum wage at the minute is £12.71. So although it sounds like a small difference of 11p to HMRC and the Home Office, that is a huge breach of compliance, and it can lead to an instant revocation. So just off the back of that, I would be particularly aware of this if you use maybe a payroll system, or if you're using an external person who does your payroll, or if there is somebody in the company, maybe it's yourself as the director or care manager, whoever's in charge of payroll, they need to be aware that that is what they are checking is every payroll cycle. So it's always got to equal what is on the cause, as opposed to believing that because you're hitting national minimum wage, that's enough. It's not. So recruitment and role evidence. So this is things like the job ad, maybe your sponsored worker's CV when they applied for the job. And it has to be because there have been a lot of revocations where the Home Office have realised that the job roles are not real. It usually is a tiny, small proportion, but it has been blown up into a big issue where they do require evidence of the role to ensure that it's genuine. SMS changes. So SMS reporting needs to be done within 10 working days. So as soon as you find out that you maybe haven't reported something, if it's 11 days or 12 working days and you've not reported it, don't be afraid to now report it. Just probably have a good reason as to why it is late. But it's always best to be transparent and report as fast as you can. Ideally or legally compliantly, it needs to be within 10 working days. So make sure that is aware. Consider this for things like whoever is logged onto your SMS as a level 1 user. Consider this, especially during this time of summer periods, who's on annual leave, who has access to report through the SMS. So just considering these small things will ensure that your reporting and your compliance issues are quite easy to avoid, because usually it's that somebody only has one person on the SMS. However, what if they're on annual leave and a change needs to be reported? And make sure all of your records are current. So make sure the HR records of your sponsored employees are up to date at all times. The biggest gaps that we see is weak right to work checks. So usually because they're done after the correct time. Salary thresholds, as I mentioned before. Poor record keeping. So this could be late reporting, or maybe not having evidence on file. Another tip as well is that most people believe that when a sponsored worker stops working for you, you don't need to keep their records. That's not true. You need to keep sponsored workers' records, even if they have left your company and they're not with you anymore. Just keep those records on file, because when the Home Office comes to visit you, they are entitled to look at evidence and documentation for past employees. Even HMRC can backdate as late as 6 years. So another reason why everything is just better to have evidence. So if HMRC have had a tip-off or something that you've not been hitting compliant pay on their COS, and they can backdate it 6 years, keep that evidence. This is a free resource here you can download, which is Audit Check. So just check that you've got all the correct documentation. Also on here will be a list of all documentation that you should have to hand when it comes to your sponsored employees. And I'm going to ask Prashant to put that in the chat as well, so we can move on from the barcode. So the habits that will keep you audit ready. Again, like I mentioned, to report. So this is a change to salary, maybe your workers' day-to-day duties, their work location, Also, if a worker has been dismissed before their COS date, and also unauthorized absences. You also need to do business reporting as well, which will be changes to, maybe there's a change in hand, maybe you've got a new director, or the business address has changed as well. This is a reporting cheat sheet, so feel free to download this one as well. Prashant will put it in the chat. These are free resources as well, so please feel free to reference them when you have your team meetings and you're trying to get organized and you want everybody to remain compliant. So this is what to expect on the actual day of a home office audit. So often unannounced, however, they can give you a letter, or they could let you know through the SMS and say, look, we're going to be visiting on this day and this day. They'll usually give you a list as well of documents that they would like to see. It could be, within a few days, I'd like these documents, or have them ready for us on the site visit. And what they'll do is they'll grab a few people who will work in the company. It doesn't need to be your sponsored workers, but it usually is. And they'll have interviews with them, and they'll ask your staff things like, describe your day-to-day. What do your day-to-days look like? Tell me your work location. They'll run through their pay with them, things like this. So this is for your staff. They'll also interview the people who run the sponsorship. So this could be your HR director. It will be the authorizing officer as well. So be prepared. You'll also have mini interviews. I will say a big thing that we tell care providers a lot of the time is that as much as it is daunting for you as a sponsor license holder, it is equally as daunting for your sponsored workforce. So we'd always advise, chat with your sponsored workforce, let them know that they will be having these spot check interviews. And because the home office for a sponsored worker, it can be quite a scary thing, because it can mean, their decision will mean whether they have the right to stay in the UK and work, or whether they have 60 days to find a new job or leave the UK. So it is a hugely daunting thing. And we completely can sympathise. Borderless, we went through a home office inspection last year. About a third of our workforce is sponsored. So we know exactly what the home office, are like, and how to deal with them. But we also understand that it's best to prepare your staff for what can happen. And again, have all your documentation to hand. So a few tips: when you're notified, acknowledge it. Don't just panic. Pull all of your reports for every sponsored worker. Decide who will speak to the officers, brief your team, redo your right to work checks, your salary checks against your COS, and look at any overdue SMS reports. Get expert advice as well before the visit, and write down what you did and when you did it. So a clear evidence trail always counts in your favor. So as much as you can date and timestamp things, try and do that as much as possible. So this is what the Borderless platform does. So it gives you live update in time compliance score. So you can see here a score of 65%. That's quite bad, we would say, for a business. So we'll notify you what documentation is missing for your sponsored workers, which documentation and sponsored workers are putting your license at risk at the minute. We'll notify them, get the correct documentation. So yeah, that's a little bit about us. And we usually aim to get companies at a 95% compliance score. So we are IA accredited and recognized by the Home Office. So if the Home Office were to come and visit you, you can say, look, we use the Borderless platform for our compliance. Here's how we track all of our visa expiries. Here's how we get our COSs. Here's how they're allocated. Here's everyone's documentation when it comes to visas and COSs. So we worked above about 600 employees, and we've done about 4,500 visa renewals, and we've helped about 13,000 workers across the UK. Now I'm going to open it up for a Q&A. I do just again want to caveat that if it is a specific immigration point, please put it in the chat, but I will get back to you privately with our immigration team. So I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat right now. Will this be added to the YouTube? Yes. All slides will be sent to you and resources as well. If you also do have something that pops up to you in your mind, maybe a week or so, you can always contact Haj and Hema, who'll get in touch with me, and maybe you'd like to speak with us further. So if you do not have any COSs left but want to employ a senior care worker from another organization who is not displaced, is this still possible? Yes, so you will still have to apply for a COS. So you'll have to reapply for another COS. I think I've answered before about unannounced visits. So you can challenge them and ask them for a few extra days. How can you challenge a revocation? So a revocation, you will need to go through an appeal. But to go over how much it costs, that would be dependent on the business. If someone is sponsored, however, not receiving any hours from their main sponsor, can we still employ them for supplementary hours? So you as a company can have supplementary or provide supplementary hours. However, their main sponsor needs to be always matching whatever is on their cause. So if on their cause they have agreed to pay them a certain amount for a certain amount of hours, they need to be matching that. So them not receiving any hours, they should still be receiving the pay for the hours. I think this is particularly comes up in tricky circumstances with domiciliary care, where it's very dependent on the hours that you get from the service user. However, the sponsor license holder has a duty of upholding what is honoured on the cause. I understand that if the cause was issued 3 years ago, you can still pay minimum wage, although Home Office. Yeah, so the £12.82 is after April 2025. So at the point of issuing a cause, we stated the rate of pay, which was already above the minimum wage. We have given pay rises in excess the minimum hourly rate. How and where do I need to report it? So as long as it's correct on the cause against their payroll, you're okay. But reporting it should be done via the SMS. Reporting changes is a grey area. Do you have to report a sponsored worker if they are 1 day sick? So it is a grey area. Unfortunately, the Home Office purposely make it grey and quite tricky. So with sickness, there is a minimum unauthorized absence leave that it would come under. If a COS reads an hourly rate lower than today's minimum wage because they were issued 2 years ago, are you required? So it depends on the date of when they were employed and awarded the cause. So again, like I said, if it was after April 2025, then it is £12.82. Sorry, Craig, if you've clicked on the Q&A, just try again for us. How can we get COSs quickly from head office? They've been taking so long. Yes, Rose, I agree. So the average wait time right now is 18 weeks. So I would highly recommend to plan your workforce the year ahead. So even after today's session, maybe have a discussion with your team, look at what hours you've been awarded. I would say we do have a pre-recorded webinar on causes, because there are some things you can do to just make sure you've got the strongest application. So it includes things like documenting why you have a need for this cause. So if you have evidence such as you've been awarded a care package from your local council and you don't have the staff to fulfill the hours, and there will be somebody left without a carer, that is quite a strong case for a cause to come quickly. There are priority routes as well. So here at Borderless, because we use technology a lot to our advantage, we know how to get the priority routes. So if it is something that you'd like to speak with us, please do get in touch after this. But please note as well with COSs, if they come back to you and request extra information, that can put you at the start of your 18 weeks all over again, unfortunately. So yes. Can we assign COSs ourselves? Yes. What support do we get from Borderless? So Borderless, it covers a huge range of areas. So visa processing, COS requests, ongoing compliance tracking, and home office reporting. So if you would like to get in touch with us to have a one-to-one demo, you can sit down with one of our team. We'll go through your business needs. And then, yes, for everybody else, because I am aware of time, this is only a short webinar. I do have all of your questions, even Chris and Craig, the ones in the Q&A. And what we'll do is I'll personally email you the answers with answers from our immigration team. So I'll give you about a minute left, everybody, to put any personal questions you want in the Q&A. So whether it could be situation dependent, and I'll get back to you with our immigration team. Does your system audit payroll to ensure we're compliant? Yes. So quite a new, well, not new, I'd say since April, since the big changes of HMRC, we've got a really cool feature on the system that matches everybody's COSs with the pay slips. And if there's any discrepancy, even if it's 1p, £1, £10, we'll flag it and we'll say, look, this doesn't match the COS that this person has been allocated. So that is a audit system that we've built specifically for sponsored workers and payroll. So everyone, I've got the questions in the Q&A. So I'll get back to you. I'll give myself the deadline of this afternoon. So we'll get back to you with all personal questions answered by immigration team. If you would like to get in contact, my name is Freya at getborderless.co.uk. That's my email address, and I can pass on any questions to our legal team. But yeah, feel free to get in contact through MCare and Norarch as well. But for now, thank you for having me, everybody, and I hope you enjoy your lovely afternoon.